Hello, dear friends. So today we are here in Shiksha Mantra. Shiksha Mantra actually is a very serious today. Now, what is the matter of seriousness? I don't need to explain all about this. For you are well aware, every one of us, we have already seen a day of Janta curfew. So if we consider this particular term, Janta, but it has a curfew in its name. And many of us, we have already found it in our social media posts where some of our friends had addressed it as not curfew, but care for you. So it's a very high situation, and it's also a very high time for us to maintain a huge social distance. Really, it's a very tough. Have you ever thought where we are trying to get socially acquainted with each other? We have been asked to get separated. We have been asked to stay separated from our near and dear ones. If you consider the condition of the students as being a teacher, my concern is obviously my students. So here, if we consider the condition of our students, it's really very critical. Critical in which sense? Critical because the higher secondary examination is just on and it had been stopped. Actually, our government is forced to stop it. They didn't have any other option. For we can't take the risk of our students. They have to reach the venue of their exam, and they have to avail public transport. So how it's possible that we put so many lives in danger when we have already learned the characteristics of this virus and how it spreads? We have seen it in China, we have seen it in Italy, we have seen it in Iran, and at present, we are gathering the data from the USA as well. So here we must stay sensible, and our governments are taking sensible decisions, both central government and governments of each and every state. So we must cooperate with them. And as I have already said, that I'm concerned about my students, our students. It doesn't mean those students whom I teach in my school, but it means all the students of India, all the students over the world. Why? Because they are in a process. I think you'd obviously be one with my opinion. There might be some difference of opinions, but I think you'd take it seriously what I'm saying. The students are in a process, and that is the process of learning. So when we stay in a process and suddenly the process is stopped, it breaks a chain. And breaking a chain, we actually get stressed. You may think that our students had scope to stay away from their teachers, from their school, so they would enjoy their time. No, it's not like this. Actually, getting separated from their classes, getting separated from their students, their classmates, getting separated from their teachers is a factor of stress as well. So I've decided that I've come alive. Yes, I'm saying live, but now I I take the term alive. I would come alive on my YouTube channel. I would stream live, and I would discuss about several topics. As you have probably seen that I have already discussed about hobby, about gardening. So we'd discuss on hobby and on obviously topics of education and learning, so that our students would get acquainted with their classrooms. Probably that would give them a feel, that would provide them a scope to learn a bit, that would provide them even to meet a teacher. That's very much important. I want them to feel that they are with the teacher. I may prepare some videos offline and put them. They could enjoy the videos, or they could learn from there as well. But live learning face to face is always a different thing. It always provides us a different feelings. So I have tried to stay alive. Again, and say live, it's alive for each and every occasion. Each and every day I would come alive in different times. And if you want, you may meet me, you may ask me questions in live streams, and we may talk about several topics. And today I have chosen a particular topic. Probably you have found it in the thumbnail or in the title of the video. I have chosen the proper approach towards learning English grammar. What would be our proper approach for learning English grammar? Look, the term learn, it's really very critical, because it's very much like, probably we may take a dry sponge as an example. Probably you have a piece of dry sponge and you drop it into water. So what would happen? The sponge would start gathering water from this, and gradually it would get wet. So such is the process of learning as well. So it's better to have an example from our proper condition that we are in right now. We have been conditioned to stay at home. You have learned, just like a sponge, you have learned to stay at home. So as a student, we learn always. And as a student, we don't have any other option but to learn. If you want or if you don't, but if you learn, only we'd have to make our approach right. So with a proper approach, you'd learn properly, because our learning must be guided practically, if we say in our academics, particularly if we say when you are going to learn English grammar, it's better that your learning get guided. So here we are going to discuss about what would be our proper approach towards learning English grammar. So the first thing that I would ask you here, suppose you are going to learn English grammar. So how you would relate this? Would you relate this to English language, spoken form, written form, for reading, for speaking, for writing, whatever would be your approach? One thing that you can't get separated from, that you are going to deal with language. Now, could you please tell me what has come first, language or its grammar? You may go to the comment section below and write down the answer, what you think, whether it's language or it's grammar, which has come first. Mm, no, it's not such a difficult question. So to learn this, you must look at the formation of language, how language has come into being. Language has come into being in a very uh, creamy situation. Creamy in which sense? Creamy because it's our need that has dragged us into our that has dragged us. Actually, I'm also live on my desktop and I'm checking the position from there as well. That's why sometimes I would have to shift my look towards the desktop as well. So, how would we think of language? Language has been created, but by no particular person. Language has been created by the society. Language means communication. The most important term here that we must learn when we are going to learn something about language, that it's for communication. We want to communicate with each other, and for that communication, to make the communication perfect, we use language. So language means some sounds. Language means some body language. So language means gesture. Language means posture. So if I say, that's also a language. So don't consider language as something that is dry, that doesn't have any sweetness in it. A language is really very sweet to learn. A language is very lively because it maintains your life. So when we think of language, obviously we don't think of grammar. Why? Because we only think of communication. So communication means we only think of expressing ourselves, and also when you are communicating with someone, your expression is vital. You must express properly what you want them to understand. And on the other hand, it's also very much important that you must understand what they are saying. So, communication is a game that goes vice versa. You'd say something, and the listener would listen and understand it. You'd also say something, and now it's your turn to listen to it and understand it properly. So, it's a double way process, it's a vice versa process. So, language means what? Language means something that helps us to create a bond between different individuals, two individuals, among different individuals. So we stay connected with language, and its one and only its single goal is to communicate, to express ourselves, and to know the others expression, to know the others feelings. So there, grammar doesn't have any role to play. So for language, grammar doesn't have any role to play. Here, I can categorically assure you that you don't need to learn anything about grammar for any language. I'm not talking of English only, any language of the world. You don't need to learn its grammar first. You need to learn to use it first in its spoken form. So you must say something in this language, and you must understand what the others saying so that you can maintain a communication. So here grammar doesn't play a role. Now if you may find it very difficult what I'm saying, you may ask me, so what's are you saying? Without grammar, how can I produce sentences? Yes, that's true. Now, if I ask you, you have found a term that is illiterate. I don't like to use this word But I have to here use this to make a bold example. You say illiterate. They have never gone to school. They have never learned anything about grammar of a particular language in which they speak. So they don't know the grammar of that language, but they use that language very successfully. So what would you say? Without grammar, it's not possible to learn language. No, it's not the fact. The fact is quite different. It's quite in contrary goes than what we think. Language first, then grammar. So what would be your approach? Most of the time, we judge grammar from language, and that's a wrong approach. You have been given a sentence. Now you'd start finding out its subject, its object, its verb, how they are related to each other, and other grammar components. So from a sentence, you find out its grammar, and there lies the problem. That's why you fail to learn the grammar of English language properly, or any second language, or any other language that you use. So why we must learn grammar? We must learn grammar to produce grammatical sentences. Grammatical sentences, not sentences. For spoken sentences, you may use only one or two words for a sentence, and it would be contextualized, and your expression would be complete, communication would happen. So there, grammar is not much essential. But when you want to produce grammatical sentences, grammar speaks how to produce the sentence by using them. And they particularly tell you in which condition you have to use which component of the language. So grammar is not for parsing only. Parsing means you have been given a sentence, Ram is a boy. Now you have started finding out is, that's the verb. Yes, this verb is not a transitive verb, it's an intransitive or copulative verbs. And Ram is the subject, a boy. It looks, uh, no, it's not an object. Rather, it's a complement. It's subjective complement because it suggests the subject back. So Ram and a boy, they're similar. So it's a subjective complement. And Ram is a noun, a boy is a noun, Ram is proper noun, boy is common noun. So you get the sentence first and then you discuss about it. But when you produce sentences, there you'd have to use the grammar that would continue within yourself, and it would language properly. So that's the way to do this. So what you would have to do, the first thing first, the first point that you must remember to make a proper approach of your English grammar. So the first point is most of the time you consider that learn English grammar to make what? To answer properly in your exam. No, this is not a right approach to do this. When you are learning English grammar, you must remember that whatever you learn, you'd have to remember them for the rest of your life. That is the first point. Learn and remember. Don't apply learn and forget formula. If you apply learn and forget, you'd be forgotten by the language as well. You can communicate, but grammatically, it's not possible for you to deal the language if you forget whatever you have learned. So learn and remember. Once you learn, remember it for the rest of your life. That's the first approach. The second approach, learn to correlate. Yes, this is the next part. If you have observed it properly, what I have said while I was pursuing the sentence Ram is a boy, I have related parts of speech, cases, and different types of parts of speeches, etc., verbs, their parts. So you don't have to treat grammar as something that goes singularly. Rather, a grammar means it's a conjugation, it's a combination of several chapters where you'd have to make a proper use of all these chapters together. So I have told you, don't forget what you have learned. This is the first thing. The second thing is make a relation in between the chapters you have learned. That means make a relation among all the chapters that you have learned because they are very much correlated. You can't separate one chapter from the other. You can't separate parts of speech from voice. You can't separate parts of speech from tense. You can't separate tense from voice. You can't separate types of sentences from narration change and from tense. They are very much interrelated to each other. So you'd have to remember each and every grammatical aspects together. You can't forget them. So that's your second approach. So let me repeat it once again. The first approach is learn and remember. The second is make a relation in between or among all the chapters that you have learned. So these two are the most important approach. And now the third and the last one. So, what's the last approach that we must take to learn English grammar properly? The third approach is you would have to produce sentences each time you complete a chapter by using the rules. You have learned the rules, you have learned the examples. And here I must add one point. When you are learning something from English grammar, you must remember that you'd have to cover every example given there. Most of the time, what we do, we learn one example and we leave the others. But remember, several examples are given because they are following several rules. If you don't follow all the examples, you can't learn everything about this chapter or about these rules. So you'd have to prepare, you'd have to learn each and every example given properly. And then you'd have to use these rules following those examples in your own sentence and make it clear that how you would use these rules when you would produce a sentence. So don't make others to force you to use the rules of the grammars, but the control must be in your hand that you would use the rules of English grammar as per your need. So, this is the most important approach about learning English grammar. I'm summarizing it once again. You'd have to use the rules of English grammar in your own way to produce proper grammatical sentences because it's grammar that makes you produce your sense, produce your expression very clearly, effortlessly in a sentence. So don't let the um, actually don't let others to guide you how to use English grammar, but obviously guide yourselves with the help of your learning so that you can use English grammar in your own way and your learning would be complete. So it's time for us to say goodbye, but before saying goodbye, I would once again appeal you to stay safe, to maintain whatever is being directed by our government, and protect your life, protect the life of your family, and obviously protect the lives of all the Indians would stay together, would fight out coronavirus together. And I'd be there in my YouTube channel live most of the time of the day to produce such topics of learning. And I hope your cooperation so that your children would stay connected with teaching and learning process. So we'll meet again tomorrow. Till then, bye bye. Stay home, stay safe.